She hadn't spoken in 4 years, not a single word. And tonight, in front of 300 people, she was about to say something that would make a grown man drop to his knees and cry. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, you need to understand what happened that night. Because what I'm about to tell you, what one stranger did in less than 5 minutes, is going to absolutely destroy you. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you will never walk past a lonely child again. Ever. Picture this. A mansion in the hills, chandeliers worth more than houses, 300 people in designer clothes drinking champagne that costs more per bottle than most people make in a week. Everyone's laughing, everyone's networking, everyone's having the time of their lives. And in the corner, beneath a sculpture that probably cost 6 figures, sits an 8-year-old girl, alone, rocking back and forth, turning a small silver snow globe over and over in her hands. She's been coming to these parties for 4 years. 4 years. And nobody, not one single person, has ever walked up to her. They step around her like she's invisible, like she's a ghost haunting her own father's house. Her name is Emma, and she's the CEO's daughter. The man throwing this party, Richard Montgomery, tech billionaire, he's her father. And he hasn't heard her voice in 4 years. Not since the night her mother died. Not since the accident that broke something inside this little girl that doctors said could never be fixed. But here's what nobody knew. Here's what's going to rip your heart out. Emma wasn't broken. She was just waiting for someone to finally see her. Elena Cruz was 24 years old, working her first real event for an elite staffing company. She'd been told to stay invisible, serve the drinks, don't make eye contact, don't speak unless spoken to. The wealthy don't want to know you exist. Those were her exact instructions. She moved through the crowd with a silver tray of champagne, weaving between conversations about stocks and vacation homes and private jets. And then she saw her. Emma, sitting alone in that corner, and Elena stopped walking. She watched as person after person walked past this child, inches away, close enough to touch her. And nobody looked down. Nobody smiled. Nobody acknowledged that this little girl even existed. And something inside Elena broke. She set down her tray. Her supervisor was going to fire her for this. She knew it. But she didn't care. She crossed that massive ballroom, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, and she knelt down beside Emma. The little girl didn't look up, just kept turning that snow globe, over and over, the tiny ballerina inside spinning endlessly. Elena didn't try to touch her, didn't try to force her to make eye contact. She just stayed there, quiet, patient, and then, very gently, she held out her hand. Palm up, an invitation, not a demand. Would you like to dance with me? Nothing happened. The music played, the party continued, and for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Emma just kept turning that snow globe, and then it stopped. Emma's hand, small and trembling, reached out and landed in Elena's palm. The room didn't notice at first. Elena stood up slowly, carefully, like she was holding something made of glass. She led Emma towards the edge of the dance floor, away from the crowd, just close enough to feel the music, and she began to sway, gentle, like a heartbeat, like a lullaby. Emma stood frozen, but then one small foot moved, then another, and that's when the entire party stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence, champagne glasses froze in mid-air, even the band seemed to play softer. Every single person in that room turned to watch. Because the little girl who hadn't let anyone touch her in 4 years, the girl who hadn't spoken, who barely looked at people, was holding hands with a stranger. And she was dancing. At the bar stood a man in a charcoal suit. His whiskey glass was gripped so tight his knuckles had turned white. Richard Montgomery, the CEO, the billionaire, the father. and he was staring at his daughter like he was seeing a ghost. His hands were shaking. His jaw was clenched so tight it looked like it might break. And tears, actual tears, were rolling down his face, because he was watching his daughter smile. For the first time in 4 years, Emma was smiling. The music swelled. Emma turned under Elena's hand, her green dress floating around her like water. And in that moment, something shifted. Something that had been locked away for 4 years finally began to open. But you need to understand something. This wasn't just a sweet moment. This wasn't just a little girl dancing at a party. This was the beginning of something that would tear this family apart before it could heal them. Because what Elena didn't know, what nobody had told her, was that dancing was forbidden in this house. Richard Montgomery had banned it. Completely. After his wife died. After the accident. He'd destroyed every recording, every costume, every reminder. He'd given explicit orders to every staff member. No ballet music. Ever. Not in his house. Not around his daughter. Because ballet was what killed his wife. The guests started leaving. Whispers followed them out into the night. Did you see that? The daughter actually moved. She let someone touch her. It's been years. The ballroom slowly emptied until only staff remained, cleaning up the remnants of wealth and excess. Elena helped collect glasses, fold linens, her mind still spinning from what had just happened. She expected someone to yell at her, to fire her on the spot. Instead, the head of household staff, an elderly man named James, approached her with something like wonder in his eyes. "You're the first person who's gotten close to her in 4 years." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." James shook his head slowly. "You didn't overstep. You stepped forward. Most people, they pretend she doesn't exist. It's easier that way." "Does she ever talk?" "Not since the night her mother died." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She was diagnosed at 4. Autism. High functioning, they call it. Patterns calm her. Music soothes her. But people terrify her. After Mrs. Montgomery passed, Emma just shut down completely. 4 years of total silence." Elena looked down at her hands, still feeling the ghost of Emma's tiny fingers. "What happened to her mother?" James glanced around, making sure they were alone. "Car accident. Mrs. Catherine was a prima ballerina, coming home from her final performance." Emma was in the back seat. The crash killed Catherine instantly. Emma didn't have a scratch on her physically, but something inside her died that night, too. The weight of it hit Elena like a truck. That's why she was dancing. She was trying to connect with her mother. James nodded. But Mr. Montgomery, he can't see it that way. All he sees is the thing that took his wife from him. Later that night, as Elena was putting on her coat to leave, a voice stopped her cold. "I need you to stay." She turned. Richard Montgomery stood in the hallway, his jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, his eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. "Mr. Montgomery, You treated her like she matters." His voice cracked. "Not like a problem to be managed, not like something broken that needs fixing, like she matters." Elena didn't know what to say. "I'm offering you a full-time position. Primary care for Emma, if you'll take it." Elena's heart hammered in her chest. This was more than a job. This was a responsibility she wasn't sure she was ready for. But when she thought of Emma, sitting alone in that corner, waiting for someone to see her, "Yes, I'll take it." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She wandered the 4th floor, familiarizing herself with the massive house. The walls were covered in framed photographs, buildings, bridges, architectural designs, Richard's work from before he pivoted to tech. At the end of the hall, she noticed Emma's door was cracked open. Blue light spilled into the darkness. Elena approached quietly and peered inside. Emma stood in the middle of her room, barefoot, wearing a pale nightgown. In front of her, a tablet glowed. On the screen, a woman in white was spinning across a grand stage, arms extended like wings, graceful, beautiful, ethereal. Catherine Montgomery, Emma's mother. Emma watched the video with an intensity that made Elena's chest ache. And then, slowly, Emma began to move, mimicking the movements. Her small arms lifted. Her feet tried to find positions her body didn't quite understand. She was dancing to a ghost, to a memory, to a mother she'd lost 4 years ago. Elena stayed in the hallway, barely breathing. The mansion was full of expensive things, priceless art, imported marble, designer furniture. But what echoed loudest through these halls was absence, the void where warmth should live, where laughter should echo, where love should flourish. Yet here, in this room, bathed in blue light, Emma was dancing, alone, in the dark, reaching for a mother who would never reach back. And Elena understood something that would change everything. Emma wasn't broken. She was grieving, and nobody had ever let her. Morning sunlight poured through the solarium windows, turning everything gold. Emma sat cross-legged on a Turkish rug, turning the silver snow globe in her hands. The tiny ballerina inside spun endlessly. The music box melody played softly. Elena knelt beside her, watching, waiting. "That's beautiful," Elena said gently. "Can I see it?" Emma hesitated. Then, slowly, she slid the snow globe across the floor. Elena picked it up carefully. It was heavier than it looked. Ornate, expensive, and inside the lid, engraved in elegant script, was a name. Catherine. Elena's breath caught. This wasn't just a toy. This was a relic. A piece of Emma's mother that she carried with her everywhere. That afternoon, Elena cleared space in the solarium. She moved furniture aside, opened the windows to let fresh air in, and played soft music from her phone. Nothing dramatic, just a gentle piano melody. She sat on the floor and tapped her fingers against the wood. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Emma watched from across the room, motionless. Elena kept tapping, kept the rhythm steady. And then, so quietly she almost missed it, Emma's foot began to tap. Once, twice, following the beat. Elena's heart soared. She stood up and began to move. Nothing complicated, just a sway, a turn, a slide across the polished floor. She held out her hand. Emma stood. No words, no eye contact. But she moved. She mirrored Elena's steps. Clumsy, uncertain, but determined. And for the first time, Elena understood. Emma's mind translated rhythm better than it translated language. Music was her native tongue. From that day forward, they danced every afternoon. Elena used movement as vocabulary. A wave for hello, a tap for wait, a spin for happiness. And Emma responded. She built a language without words, a universe made of motion and melody. Through this language, Elena began to understand Emma's grief, not as silence, not as withdrawal, but as something alive, something that needed to be expressed, not suppressed. One cloudy afternoon, Elena passed the staff break room. The door was cracked open. Inside, 2 housekeepers were talking in hushed, urgent tones. She's doing it again. Doing what? Dancing? With the new girl? The second woman's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Mr. Montgomery is going to lose his mind. Why? After Catherine died, he banned all ballet music from this house. Threw out every recording, every costume, every single reminder. He told the entire staff, if he ever hears ballet music in this house again, they're fired on the spot. Elena felt ice spread through her veins. He said ballet destroyed his family, said it took everything from him. That evening, the sun was setting, painting the solarium in shades of gold and violet. Elena and Emma were dancing. Emma was moving faster now, more confident, her small feet finding the rhythm with ease. She let out a breathy sound that might have been laughter. Elena twirled, letting Emma lead for the first time, and that's when the door slammed open. Richard stood in the doorway. He didn't speak, but his eyes were locked on his daughter, spinning in her green dress, the snow globe melody playing from Elena's phone. Elena froze. Her heart stopped. Emma didn't notice. She kept dancing, lost in the music, lost in the memory of her mother. Richard's jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists. He took a step forward. I gave explicit instructions. His voice was low, dangerous. No ballet music in this house, ever. Elena's mouth went dry. Mr. Montgomery, I apologize. She responds so well to it, and I thought, I don't care what you thought. His voice was ice, pure ice. This doesn't belong here. He turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a sound like a coffin lid slamming shut. The music stopped. Emma stopped moving. She looked up, sensing something broken in the air, her hands twisting her dress anxiously. Elena knelt beside her, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart." But it wasn't okay. Elena had opened a door Richard had spent 4 years sealing shut, a door lined with memories and grief and pain so deep he couldn't look at it without drowning. And now that door was open, and there was no closing it again. The next morning, Elena packed her single duffel bag and left a note on the kitchen counter. Short, simple. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm sorry for any pain I caused. She slipped out through the service entrance as dawn broke over Los Angeles, passing the gardens where Emma had spun just yesterday. Elena paused, looking back at the mansion, wondering if Emma would understand why she left, wondering if anyone would even tell her. By evening, rain drummed against the windows of Elena's tiny Echo Park apartment. She'd just made tea when someone knocked. Soft, hesitant. She opened the door. Richard Montgomery stood there, soaked despite his umbrella, holding her crumpled note in his hand. "Please don't go." Elena stepped aside without a word. Richard entered slowly, water pooling on her cheap linoleum floor. He stood there, staring at the steam rising from her tea, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I handled that terribly." His voice was rough, raw. "I wasn't prepared to see her like that." "I understand. I shouldn't have." "She looks exactly like Catherine when she dances." The words came out broken, shattered. Elena stayed quiet. "My wife was extraordinary." Richard's voice cracked. "When she moved, it was like gravity didn't apply to her, like she existed in some other plane where darkness couldn't reach. She was pure light." He swallowed hard. Her final performance, Swan Lake. She wanted to bring Emma backstage. I told her no. Too late. Too dangerous. Said I'd pick them up after, but Catherine insisted. She said she wanted Emma to witness beauty before life taught her anything cruel. His voice broke completely. The crash happened on Pacific Coast Highway. Drunk driver. Crossed the median at 80 miles an hour. Catherine died on impact. Emma was in the back seat. The doctors said she suffered a traumatic brain injury. Mild, they claimed. But it affected her speech, her social processing, the way she connects to the world. Tears were streaming down his face now. I buried Catherine 3 weeks later, and every time I looked at Emma after that, all I could see was what I'd lost. Not because of her, God, never because of her, but because I failed them both. I should have been there. I should have driven them home myself. He pressed his palm against his forehead. After the funeral, I locked everything away. Every recording, every costume, every photograph. I thought if I erased the reminders, the pain would fade. No more ballet, no more music, no more spinning. A bitter, broken laugh. But Emma never stopped. She found her way back to it on her own. I just refused to see it. Elena stepped closer. She hasn't stopped feeling you, Richard. She hasn't stopped trying to reach you. He looked at her with so much pain it was almost unbearable to witness. She doesn't speak, Elena said softly. But she communicates. When I tap, she taps back. When I turn, she follows. When I stop, she stops. It's her language, her way of trying to connect with you. She misses Catherine. But I think she's also trying to tell you something. That she's still here. That she still needs you. The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Then Richard sank into Elena's second-hand chair. He looked older suddenly. Not in years, but in weight. The weight of grief carried alone for far too long. She said Dada once. He whispered. The day she was born, just a sound, but Catherine swore she meant it. Elena smiled sadly. She still does. Rain tapped against the window like a heartbeat. Richard leaned back, eyes closed. I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix anything. You just have to show up. She'll meet you there. And for the first time in 4 years, Richard Montgomery nodded. Not as a CEO, not as a man with all the answers, but as a father, finally ready to try. Change came in whispers. Small moments that built into something bigger. One morning, as Elena helped Emma stretch in the solarium, she asked gently, "Did you have fun yesterday?" For the first time ever, Emma didn't look away. She didn't continue her routine. She paused, considered the question, and then she shrugged. It was small, almost nothing, but it was a response, an acknowledgement, a connection. Elena's heart nearly exploded. From there, the world shifted in tiny increments. Emma began choosing songs, pointing to specific pieces when Elena offered options. Soft piano, gentle strings, a classical harp piece she wanted to hear every single day. Sometimes Emma would walk over and tug on Elena's sleeve, eyes focused somewhere near her shoulder. It meant, let's dance. She still didn't speak, still avoided eye contact and unexpected touch. But in those quiet rehearsals, she transformed. She became graceful, focused, almost luminous. One rainy afternoon, Elena was searching for extra blankets in the storage room when she found a trunk pushed into the corner, covered in dust, forgotten. She opened it carefully. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, were Catherine Montgomery's ballet shoes, worn satin, hand-stitched ribbons, initials embroidered in gold thread. Elena held them like they were made of glass, like they were sacred. She brought them to Emma without explanation. Emma ran her fingers over the ribbons with reverence. Then she clutched the shoes to her chest and didn't let go for the rest of the day. That evening, Elena found Richard in his study. Firelight cast shadows across shelves of books and awards. She stood in the doorway, hesitating. I'd like to propose something. Richard looked up. A small performance, just for Emma. Nothing formal, just a few people she trusts. The solarium would be perfect. Richard didn't respond immediately. His fingers traced the rim of his glass. She's never performed for anyone. I know, but she's ready, and I think she wants you to see. Silence. Then, all right. 4 days later, the solarium glowed in late afternoon light. Paper lanterns hung from the ceiling. The garden beyond swayed in a gentle breeze. Elena kept the audience tiny. James, the gardener, the kind housekeeper, and Richard. The music began, soft, familiar. Elena held her breath. Emma entered, wearing a simple white dress and her mother's ballet shoes, the ribbons tied carefully around her ankles. She moved slowly, each step deliberate. She spun once, arms lifting, then paused. Her eyes found Richard. He sat in the back, hands clasped, jaw tight. He hadn't moved since she entered, and then Emma's lips parted. "Daddy, watch me." Her voice was soft, clear, real. The room shattered. Richard's hand flew to his mouth, his eyes flooded with tears. James gasped. The gardener removed his cap and pressed it to his heart. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. Emma didn't wait. She turned, arms extended, and began to dance. Freer now, lighter, as if speaking had unlocked something trapped inside her for 4 years. Each step was music made visible. Each turn was a story finally being told. When the song ended, silence held them all. Then Richard stood. He walked to the center of the floor and knelt, arms open wide. Emma hesitated for one heartbeat. Then she ran to him. He caught her and held her like he'd just found something lost at sea, something precious beyond measure. From the edge of the solarium, Elena watched through her tears. The first word had fallen, and everything was about to change. The day after the performance, the Montgomery house felt different, lighter. The oppressive weight that had pressed down on every room for 4 years had lifted. Richard began showing up, not just passing through, but staying. He stood in doorways during Emma's stretches, watched as Elena helped her balance. Some days he joined them, clumsy at first. But Emma would reach out, guide his hands, giggle when he stumbled. One afternoon, Richard brought down an old turntable from the attic. Catherine used to dance to this. The vinyl crackled to life. Richard sat cross-legged on the floor beside his daughter, both of them letting the music wash over them. The man Elena once thought was cold and distant was becoming someone else, someone whose silences meant thoughtfulness, not absence, someone who could move with unexpected gentleness. And Elena began to see him differently, not just as a healing father, but as a man learning to live again. One evening, as Elena gathered her things to leave, she nearly collided with Richard in the hallway. He was holding a vinyl record, his hand tucked nervously in his pocket. "Leaving already?" She nodded. "My shift ended." He held up the record. This was Catherine's favorite. "I was thinking of playing it." Elena smiled. She had great taste. Richard opened the solarium door. "Do you dance? Outside of teaching Emma?" Elena's pulse quickened. "Not really." A pause. Then Richard set the record on the turntable. A piano melody rose, old and golden. He turned to her. "I haven't danced since the night Catherine died." His voice shook. "But if you wouldn't mind?" He extended his hand. Uncertain. Vulnerable. Elena hesitated. Then slowly she placed her hand in his. They stood there, finding each other's rhythm. Richard moved stiffly at first, but Elena guided him gently. The room felt suspended, time folding in on itself, rain beginning to tap against the windows. Richard looked down at her, a half smile on his lips. "I didn't think I'd ever do this again." Elena met his gaze, steady, warm. For those few minutes, there were no ghosts, just two people learning to breathe in the same tempo. Later that evening, while organizing Richard's study, Elena reached for some folders. Something slipped out and fluttered to the floor. A ticket stub. Swan Lake. Final performance, featuring Catherine Montgomery. 4 years old. Edges worn, but perfectly preserved. Elena turned it over. On the back, in faint handwriting, one word. Forever. She stood there, holding the past in her hands. Richard had never let go. He'd just been too afraid to hold on. But now, maybe he was learning how. Late summer sun poured through the Montgomery penthouse windows. Tonight was intimate. A private reception for long-time investors, String quartet, crystal glasses, quiet conversations. Elena stood near the terrace doors, watching Emma outside. The girl wore her emerald dress, spinning slowly. Richard had agreed to let her dance. Nothing rehearsed, just a moment. A small act of courage. Emma had asked for this. The first time she'd ever asked to be seen. Guests began to notice. Conversations paused. People drifted toward the doors, watching respectfully. But not everyone appreciated it. Near the back, a man in a navy suit leaned toward his companion. His voice carried. "Why is he allowing this? It's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to watch a special needs child at a business event." Elena's shoulders went rigid. She turned. "Excuse me?" The man raised his eyebrows. "I'm simply saying it's inappropriate. Bad for the company image." Elena stepped forward, voice low but cutting. "And that is why children like her grow up believing they don't belong, because people like you decide they are not suitable for your comfort, and they learn to hide." The man's lips parted, but another voice cut through. "I suggest you stop talking." Everyone turned. Richard stood at the entrance, perfectly calm. He walked forward, passing Elena, eyes fixed on the man in navy. "If anyone here believes my daughter has no place in this home, in this company, or in this world, you're welcome to leave. And don't come back." No one moved. Richard's voice softened but carried. "My daughter is not broken. She is not strange. She is simply herself. And I will never allow anyone to make her feel less than that." From the terrace, Emma had stopped dancing. She stood at the threshold, watching her father. Richard turned and extended his hand. "Come here, sweetheart." Emma walked forward and placed her hand in his. They stood together, side by side, not hidden, not pitied, seen, whole, unapologetic. The old theatre smelled of velvet and worn wood, of dreams pursued and stories told. Elena had spent weeks preparing, cleaning, setting up lights, organizing other children for the showcase. But Emma's name was at the top of the program. Swan Lake, children's variation. A modest audience filled the seats, and in the front row sat Richard Montgomery, hands clasped, eyes on the curtain. The lights dimmed. The music began. The opening notes of Swan Lake drifted across the theatre like a prayer. Then came the soft patter of small feet. Emma stepped onto the stage in a white dress, copper curls braided into a crown, Catherine's ballet shoes on her feet. She began to move, slowly, purposefully, arms opening like wings, toes gliding with surprising grace. She didn't dance with technical precision, but her movements held something deeper. Soul, emotion, the kind that only comes from dancing with the heart. She twirled, dipped, and as the music swelled, spun into a perfect pirouette. The theatre held its breath. Then applause erupted, rising to the rafters. Some people clapped with hands over their mouths, others with tears streaming down their faces. Richard stood slowly, trembling. His face was wet with tears, but he was smiling. Emma wasn't finished. Instead of bowing, she turned. She walked to the edge of the stage. She reached out, first for Elena, then for Richard. Two small hands pulling theirs toward her. They stepped onto the stage, stunned. Emma placed their hands together, one atop the other. Richard looked at Elena, something raw breaking through in his eyes. He leaned closer, voice low. Catherine always believed someone would come, someone who wouldn't turn away, someone who'd help me see Emma again. He paused. You were that someone. Elena? Elena swallowed hard. She chose well. He added, glancing at Emma between them. The spotlight held them. The applause swelled. A few weeks later, Elena accepted Richard's offer to become Emma's full-time companion. Not just a job, a bond, something permanent. Richard went further, announcing a foundation in Catherine's name, supporting neurodivergent children in the performing arts. "Because every child deserves a stage," he said at the press conference, "and someone who believes they belong on it." Emma stood beside him that day in her emerald dress, and Elena stood behind, watching, heart full. Not every family is born from blood. Some are built step by step, note by note, dance by dance. And under the theatre lights, one such family found its way home. 4 years of silence, broken by one person who refused to look away. If you're still watching this, if tears are streaming down your face right now, then you understand something most people never will. Everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves to be seen. If this story absolutely destroyed you in the best way possible, if it reminded you that one act of kindness can change absolutely everything, then do me a favor right now and smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel because we share stories like this every single week. Stories that will wreck you, rebuild you, and restore your faith in humanity. Stories that actually matter. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the next one. And remember, the next time you see someone sitting alone, someone everyone else is ignoring, be the Elena. Be the one who finally sees them. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember this. Sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to look away to change absolutely everything.